To sign in, if you are a brand new user, you're just going to add that /user to the web page. It's going to take you to this login screen. So for the most part, I do recommend this login with Google option. This will create an account or sign you into an existing account with that same email address. It does have to be connected to a Google account, but it's super easy to get a Google account set up without having to create a new email. If you need information on how to do that, feel free to submit a ticket to partner support. And Jordan, if you could also go ahead and plug that partner support link into the chat as well. I'm more than happy to send those instructions along just in case if you do need to set them up. You can use a traditional username and password if you wish. A couple of tips with the username, make sure that it is going to be a first name, last name kind of setup. That way, when you're submitting those security agreements, then you're going ahead. We just want to make sure that the name on the security agreement go ahead and match the actual username so that we can just keep track of our users. So I'm going to log in with Google because I'm an existing user. I'm going to select my account that I want to choose. This is going to be similar to what you will see if you're creating an account using Google, except I'm going to skip over the password part because I'm already a authenticated user. Past that screen, it's going to ask for your Google account password, not a unique Drupal password. So just keep that in mind. So now that I'm signed in, and you've also gotten your roles and all that fun stuff, this is that authenticated view. So you're going to see that I have a few extra buttons. I also have this handy dandy toolbar at the top of my page. I'm going to have quite a few extra buttons than you might. You should, if you are the main admin for your site, you should see content, structure, configuration, people, and help. So all these extra guys you could go ahead and ignore. If you are not the main admin, then you should have access to content, structure, configuration, but not people. People is that managing users tab. So new users, you can moderate, manage them from there, adjust what they can and cannot moderate or edit, all that fun stuff. But just to keep it succinct, let's just go ahead and take a look at other things that kind of pop up when we're authenticated. When you're on a page, you now have additional buttons to edit the page directly, review revisions, clone, all that fun stuff. Quick little tip. This delete button, you can delete any page on your site, but for your home page, that main welcome page, do not delete your home page. I would not even recommend cloning it. You will not be able to probably tell the difference between the new page and the old page. Very easy to delete that original page. And it is kind of structurally important as well. You can lose some work if we need to revert it back to a previous state. It's just best to edit the page as it is. You can delete all of the rows and cards inside of it and just start from scratch that way, but don't delete it completely. You'll also notice that when you hover over certain content pieces, this pencil icon will appear. So if you wanted to edit your main navigation, you can click on this pencil icon to edit the menu. You'll also see this for your footer as well. So this guy hanging down at the very bottom of the page. So take advantage of those shortcuts. Makes life a whole lot easy, especially if you're kind of new to the back end of the site. I do encourage you to go through that back end motion and all that fun stuff, but yeah, go ahead and use those pencil icons. And so now let's just talk a little bit about anatomy because I want to make sure we do cover layouts fully. So at the very top of our page, we have our alert bar. This is a content piece that you can set up. You can only have one published at a time. You can kind of have one, edit what's existing, or create a bunch of them and publish and unpublish as needed. Underneath, we have our Google Translate. We do have an additional menu called Utility Nav that kind of hangs out next to it, but Translate is baked into the site, translate into 70 plus different languages. If this if this ever needs to be updated, we will update it for you. Underneath that, we have our search. This search bar is essentially going to kind of work with your site. You won't have to manually index or anything like that. When you create something, Google will index it within a few days and it will become searchable. So be patient. May not be searchable right away, but it will be available eventually. So this is handy because especially if you're into SEO, you can add additional terms into the back end of the site. You can make things a little bit easier to find that way. And also you don't have to manage your search bar, which is really nice. Off to the right with this demo, this is our main logo. So if you have a logo for your site and you need it to be changed or uploaded here, you can go ahead and submit a ticket to partner support. You won't have access to this. We will upload it for you. And it's a pretty quick thing. So if you want to try a bunch of different logos, feel free to send over what you have and we can always try. Underneath, we have our main navigation. So this is all of your most important links. Think about what people are visiting your page to do when you're editing your main navigation. You don't want to fill it completely. If you have tons and tons of pages, having a main navigation with 100+ links is probably not a fabulous idea. So definitely keep that in mind. You can create submenus as well. So you don't necessarily have to rely entirely on the main navigation as your only menu. There are other options. But yeah, this is just your most important links. They're going to live up here. Underneath this, we have our Jumbotron. This is just a nice big banner image. It does have image specifications. So essentially, if you want to have a Jumbotron image, this is going to be 2,115 pixels by 450. This is kind of an important number because the Jumbotron will essentially stretch the image or crop it to make it fit those specifications. So it's a little picky. Underneath, we actually have the beginning of our main page. A tip to find or a tip to kind of see where that starts is where these edit buttons appear. So this is our indication that this is a page. I am now editing the page versus one of these other structure items. So this page is set up with rows and cards. Just to kind of cover them very briefly, because we're going to be talking about layout specifically today. We can kind of think of this as like a bookshelf. Our row is our shelves, right? Our horizontal organization. So that's one row. This is our second row, our third row, our fourth row, right? And then our columns or our cards are going to be our vertical separation. So that's going to be this photo is an individual column. This text is an individual column. So these are our books on our bookshelf. So everything's just about stacking, right? And layouts is very similar to that as well. What's nice about layouts is that you can move content through all of the rows. You don't have to create a new row to move content around. It's very, very handy. But yeah, just to kind of cover what that looks like. And layouts also is going to look visually very similar to rows and cards once the content is published as well. So there's not going to be a huge jarring difference to users when they see a page that's maybe built in layouts versus a page that's maybe built within rows and cards. So that way you don't necessarily have to worry about migrating content or anything like that. You can kind of start fresh without there being a huge jump in what these things look like. And then at the very bottom of our page, we have our footers. Each site comes with 2 footers. Maybe kind of hard to tell at first, but that first footer is going to be this light gray. That second footer is going to be this darker gray. If it's a different color, you can kind of think of this first footer as the lighter color, the second footer as this darker color. This first footer is your custom footer. You can change whatever's in here. You can remove it entirely if you don't need it. Up to you on what you want to do with this footer. To edit this footer, you're going to click this pencil icon and select edit. And it's going to be rows and cards just like our pages. So just keep that in mind. It's going to kind of function like a little mini page. I would keep it to 1 row as well, but to each their own. One thing to note, and this is going to be kind of important moving forward, is that if you don't have an accessibility statement somewhere on your site, you can throw it in the footer as well. This is a really good visible place to have it. When you're building your accessibility statement, just make sure you also include where users can contact you on where to kind of be able to report an issue on your site so that you can remediate it. My personal suggestion is throwing that in the footer. The footer is going to follow users around on every page that they visit. So just kind of makes the most sense to have it in there. So just keep that in mind. If your site doesn't have an accessibility statement, probably about time to develop it and throw it on the site. And the footer is kind of the most visible place to place that. This bottommost footer is our global universal footer. You cannot change this. This is legislated. We will update this for you if something ever needs to be updated in here, whether it's the year, the logo's changing, a new link in here. So you don't have to worry about managing this. We'll manage it for you. Awesome. I know we kind of blitzed through that, but any questions about the general site anatomy? Perfect. So let's go ahead and look at a couple content pieces, and then we're going to look at layouts, because just like basic pages, there are content items within layouts where you first have to create it within this content space, and then you can apply it onto layouts. So first and foremost, if you are ever making a big change to your website, your first step should be to get any images or documents that you're going to be using into the media library. To get to your media library, we're going to click on content just to refresh. And then in content, you're going to have these tabs kind of hanging out. You're going to select media. So your media library is completely separate from your usual content library. This does not replace any file management solution. It's just there to help you add things to your site easily, kind of keep track of maybe what's in your site, but you should not rely on this as your sole file management solution. But it is definitely handy to have all of your images and documents in here. So let's go ahead and add media. Let's add a document first. And let's go ahead and give it a name. So when we are naming our documents within this backend and we are choosing a file, we want to make sure that the file name and the name that we're actually giving it within our little media library matches, right? So I'm naming this test because the document that I'm going to select is also named test. Found, yep. Perfect. And you can see it's got an _3. You know, this thing gets uploaded a lot to this site. So anytime you have a duplicate file, it will add a number for you to differentiate. So just keep that in mind. You can always click to preview the file as well once it's uploaded. I'm paranoid. I'm always worried that I'm uploading the wrong thing. So it's definitely handy to be able to preview it. Also keep in mind that the files that you're uploading to this document space, if they're not already PDFs, I would go ahead and convert them to PDFs. It's the most accessible file type. It's in so many different meanings of that word. People can open it within their browser, save it, print it. Works really nicely with most screen readers. Kind of covers all your bases. So just make sure they're all PDFs. Additionally, if you remember me talking about that search bar and search engine optimization, this description field, you can go ahead and use this to add certain keywords or extra elements to make certain things more findable as well. So if that is what you're kind of looking for, is having a little bit more control over what pulls up when people search, you can add additional language here. Related tags, this is purely for internal sorting. So if you need a little bit of help, you have maybe thousands of documents and it's kind of handy to have something that will separate those documents out, you can add those tags here. So let's just go ahead and hit save. Awesome. And let's add an image. Perfect. So we're going to give this a name. This is going to be cannoli. Cannoli has been uploaded to this site many, many times. And just in case you also need a refresher on how to add alt text or what to put for alternative text, you now have an extra step where we have to clarify alternative text here. So context is pretty important for something like this, but you also want to be really clear and concise, and you don't want to spend sentence and sentence and sentence, a whole paragraph describing something, because screen readers are often not as fast as we are, right? They don't speak as fast as a human can speak. So just keep that in mind, is that if it's too long, that's also not accessible. So I could say that because I know this image of cannoli is a portrait for adoption, I could say this is a portrait. A large black dog, curly hair. my goodness. Sorry, I'm on my laptop today and the keyboard is a little smaller than what I'm used to. Um, Perfect. So it can be that simple. If you have a weird one, something like that, feel free. You can always reach out and ask for advice. Description, this is just more SEO related tags, same as that document. And now we can hit save and our image is now added to our library. Any questions about the media library? Once, twice? Okay, awesome. So let's go through content really quick so that we can finish out with layouts and have plenty of time for layouts. Couple of content pieces that you need to create first before you can add them into layouts is going to be contacts, events, and where are you? Articles. So we have to populate this first before we can actually set it up. So just starting with articles, this is just a feed of content. We can kind of think of articles as a mini page as well. So you're kind of creating a feed of little pages. You can use these for blog posts, news articles, press releases. This is our demo site. So we do have this little extra division news we test in here. So this is not going to be relevant to any of y'all's sites. So we can select news article, and just for your awareness, nothing changes depending on what I pick, right? Everything stays the same. This is just so that you can label it as something and then have a unique feed for that label. So a unique feed for blog posts, a unique feed for news articles, a unique feed for press releases, right? But they don't actually change the functionality of setting this up. So I'm going to go ahead and call this my test article. We can add text into here. And here's a pro tip. I'm going to be using some placeholder text. I'm clearly pulling this from another website. When I'm doing that, when I'm copying, so Control C and pasting, I want to remove all that formatting. So I want to paste this plain text. That way, I'm not carrying over fonts and colors and WebKits and styles. This is a really easy way to get a false positive on your accessibility scans for issues. So really easy way to remediate that is by just getting ahead of it and removing that styling. Perfect. So we have our text in here. And so let's say we also want to add our image of cannoli in here. We can click this little music note icon in our WYSIWYG editor, which is this text editor right here. You're going to see this guy all over the place. Anytime that you're adding text into your site, it's going to be through this text editor. So these steps still apply all over the site. I'm going to click this icon with the music note, and it's going to pull up my media library. I can select the image I want to use and then insert it, and then boom, it's in there. That's what's so nice about the media library and why we like to use it is that now you don't have to constantly go through your computer files and all of that. You've already kind of done the tedious work of adding these things. Now you just got to reference them. Perfect. And one more thing, let's say we're hyperlinking something. So we're highlighting a piece of text and clicking that link it button. You can search through all of your pages here and then select the page that you want to link. You may notice that it is a node instead of a traditional URL pathway. We can just think of a node as a number ID for that page. So no matter how the page changes, because that number is always going to stay the same, all of your links will continue to work. And that's why we like linking with nodes. So go ahead, make sure you're doing that and give it a try. Perfect. And just for the sake of time, because I really want to have enough time to cover layouts, we're going to call it good here. I would highly recommend setting up a drafted sandbox page to test things out, to try things out, something that's not public. The best way to learn is by doing. So I am going to go ahead and also publish this. Articles, because it is a feed, it needs to reference published content. So if I just put this in a draft state, it's never going to show up. So just make sure you're publishing these things. Awesome. So let's go back to content. Let's just cover events really quick, and then we'll go ahead and just move on to layout so that we have enough time. Definitely a new thing we're adding to our training, so I will be adjusting the timing and all of that. So I do apologize if we run a little bit over, or if I am kind of slow to touch on it. I want to make sure I'm still including these basic items while covering the new functionality, but yes. So go ahead, give me some grace, give me some feedback as well on how you would like to see these things moving forward. But let's just cover events because people always have events on their site. Events are just a calendar item. The calendar is kind of always living within your site, but it doesn't actually know when to show up until you add an event and publish it, then add it to a page. So we could say this is our testing event. We can put our little blurb of text in here. So let's pretend that this is info about the event. You can put a Zoom link in here, all that fun stuff. There's even rows and cards, so you can turn this into a full page if you want to. Event summary, you can show date and time, organizer. You can fill out this organizer space. You can show the email. This email will be a clickable link so people can easily contact the organizer. And then we also have map functionality. This is powered through Google Maps. So you can plug in an address here. So let's say this is our old office building in Denver, Colorado. And um, just like our articles, we want to make sure it's published. But before that, we got to set a date and time. So we can say that this is for tomorrow. It's for right now. And you can either select all day if it's an all day event or just have it set to that. And then repeat. So you can have this repeat on weekly, monthly, annually. You can even get a little bit more granular than that. You can say this repeats every 2 weeks and it ends after 4 instances, right? And then advanced, you can even specify that it's always going to be Thursday as well. So now we can hit save on our published event. And you'll be able to see here that now we can look at all the times that it's happening, who organized it, how can I contact them, an interactive map. So if you're meeting in person, people can easily get directions, and then just information about the event itself. All right, any questions about these little content pieces? 1, 2. Okay, awesome. Definitely. Oh, yes, Leah?
Um, yeah, and I think you touched on this, but how did you pull in that map?
Oh, yeah. So if you just edit your event, and then go into your event summary, it'll just be this location.
Okay, and it
Yep.
automatically pulls in like the API.
Yep. You
Okay,
just got to plug in an address and it works.
perfect.
Yeah, of course. All right. So finally, layout. So we have a couple of content pieces. We want to plug them into a layouts page. This is going to function very similar to how it used to, at least setting it up will. So we're going to go to add content. We're going to find our layouts. And we're going to give it a name. So this is our sandbox layout. Perfect. And here's just a little tip. If you don't want a Jumbotron on your layout, select no Jumbotron. Otherwise, it's going to default to show site Jumbotron. If you don't want that, you can go with just no Jumbotron. This is the best place to start, in my opinion. Then you can add the Jumbotron later. And we just want to make sure that additionally it's also published, but you can edit this without publishing it. Anytime that you're editing a page or a layout and it's unpublished, it's going to have this kind of pink background behind everything. It won't show up here because there's nothing in here. But now we can actually start adding to our layouts. We will not be editing. You're going to click on the layout button itself. So when we click on layout, we're going to see this screen. This is also going to look very familiar to people who have touched layouts a little bit prior to our big update. And apologies, I'm on the office Wi-Fi today, so I'm a little slower than normal. There we go. Awesome. So we're going to see this page. So if you remember rows and cards, we can kind of replace this vocabulary. So add section is going to be those horizontal dividers, right? Or sorry, those vertical dividers, right? So our sections are kind of us saying, okay, I want 2 cards or 3 cards, 4, 5. We even included up to 6. So you can have a ton of sections on here. But let's just do 4 for today. So you're going to first select how many you want. I would like 4. And then once it's thinking, you can then select from this screen what spatial division you want. And you can change this at any time. So if you remember with rows and cards, I do see a couple of legacy users in here. If you do remember rows and cards, you probably remember that once you've decided that column width, you're kind of stuck with it. You have to make a new one otherwise. But this way, you can actually make changes last minute and decide, actually, now that I've populated content into this space, I'm not a big fan of how the spacing is set up. And you can always adjust it from there. So we have equal columns, we have uneven columns, all of that fun stuff. And you can even see like kind of previews for mobile and tablet as well. But I would recommend that if you're building on desktop, that you select the desktop options. So I'm going to go with equal columns today. So I'm going to select here and it's going to pop right up. But also, this is a really exciting part, is that now you can add background colors directly here and you can preview the colors. If you remember, it was just a list of words and you kind of had to reference a separate site to see what those are. They're labeled and you can also visually see it. One little bug you might run into, and we're aware and we are going to be addressing it, is that sometimes once you select a color, it won't save. You'll have to go back and select it again. So just keep in mind, if you select box screen, for example, and then you'll see nothing kind of changed. You can kind of close this. Configure the section. So configure is where you can kind of change up the size again, kind of restyle things if you want to. Just opens it right back up. You can kind of select the color again and it should work. There it goes. So quick little thing is just that there's that one little thing, but we're aware of the issue. Perfect. You can also choose padding, so you can kind of have more control over this space in between blocks. You can change the color of borders. You can change the border style, the width of the border, so how thick those lines are. You can also customize border radius. So this is rounded corners. So you can round one corner, but keep the rest sharp, or you can round all 4 of them or just 2. So definitely play with this and let us know what you guys think, because it's kind of a really exciting addition, is this level of customization to these blocks. There's also animations for when you scroll. So if you have a user scrolling up or down, you can have it fade in or fade out or flip or zoom and all that fun stuff. So there's just a ton of customization that's available. Let's just say for now, let's do a fade up animation. And just so you can kind of see what I'm talking about with those kind of corners, I am just going to go ahead and round them just so you can see. And you can see, hopefully you can, I can zoom in if you can't. You can see where it's kind of rounded here now. So lots of extra like super customization. Perfect. Any questions about getting sections set up before we start adding blocks? Hopefully it's all making sense so far. I know it's a lot of new stuff, but thanks for hanging in there with me. And let's just go ahead and start adding blocks. So blocks are our cards, right? It's where we're actually putting content into our sections or our rows. So we can go ahead and create a simple block. A simple block is just our text editor, right? Our WYSIWYG, our CK editor. It's just this. So I'm just going to plug my little blurb of text in here. I may even remove a little bit because I have so many sections that I don't want it to be too tall. Oops, go away, Grammarly. Awesome. And now we can hit save. Oops. And make sure you give it a title. You can say, hello, world. And it's thinking. Awesome. So now we've added this section. So Additionally, another little accessibility safeguard is that if you do have a colored background, is that it is going to default to having a white background for your blocks and sections. You can change that by clicking this pencil icon and hitting configure, and then changing the style to colors as well. Use common sense with this, of course, when it comes to accessibility. Contrast is extremely important. I would do your very best not to layer light on light or dark on dark. I would avoid it at all costs. But if you're running to contrast issues and you think the color contrast is sufficient, you're not 100% sure, feel free to submit a ticket to partner support so that we can take a look and address it if it needs to be addressed. And again, those spacing options are there, border options as well. So you can also round. And this is kind of a fun part. You can round specific corners. So I can round just the top left and then also just the bottom right. And this can kind of create maybe like a more unique and dynamic little design here, right? I love asymmetry in design, so I'm sorry in advance, but you have just so much more additional customizations with layouts. Very exciting. So let's go ahead and add another block. This time we are going to do a content block. So our content is going to be our usual cards, right? So basic block is going to be our basic card or our simple block that we just set up, which is this text block. Icon block, this is our icon cards, a nice big button with a graphic. We'll touch on that. Media block, pulling from our media library, this will be our images. Open embed block, this is where you can kind of plug in your social media feeds, maps, things like that. We do have a built-in map card as well, though. So if you didn't want to embed a map, you'd rather use Google Maps, you can use this. Slider block is our carousels, and then views reference. This is the one that kind of does a few different things. So this is where we're going to use our calendar. So our event that we set up, we'll use our views reference to set it up. And then our article feed as well, we'll also be using the views reference block. Views reference does all sorts of stuff. But just to start us, let's go ahead and cover icon blocks. So I'm going to select icon block, and then we have to give it a title. What's nice about the update to the icon block is that if you remember the icon cards where you're just limited in how much text you could use, you now can add a title and body text to your icon card. So I can say, this is our icon card. And then I can maybe plug in a little bit of my Latin in here. Of course, be reasonable with how much text is in there. It is a button at the end of the day, but you can add additional text, which is very fun. You can display the title here. And then you can also search within Font Awesome here, or by clicking this hyperlink, it will open up to the Font Awesome website and you can kind of browse directly. Or if you kind of know what you're looking for, so if I wanted to place a globe here, it's going to think and search through Font Awesome's library. Perfect, and it's going to show us all of the options related. So you can even see that stuff that doesn't specifically have globe in it will pull up. So it is pretty smart. So let's go ahead and do Earth Americas. You can change additional settings here. So you can change widths, animation, styles. There's all sorts of stuff you can do in here. Duotone, transformation. So definitely get in there and play. Icon position, so you can choose where it lives, either below the text, above the text, to the right or to the left. I mostly use it for above, so I'm going to leave it just like that. And then links. So you can link to documents, media items, or pages. For the sake of time, I'm just going to link to our homepage, but you can see that it will search all sorts of different content options, right? So not just pages, but different content types as well. But I'm going to choose home. And then if you remember my little spiel about nodes, there's that node number again. So that's what those links are going to look like in a non-pathway kind of setting. Alrighty. And so you can also set it up so it'll open a link in a new window. And I just saw your comment, Leah. Guess is probably the wrong word. Definitely make sure that it has that acceptable contrast. It will force it to fit with that acceptable contrast as well. So that's kind of my point about if it does layer and it doesn't layer nice, we want to hear from you, right? So that's kind of more of what I was getting at, is that you can layer these colors. I would not necessarily choose to layer light on light or dark on dark, but it should force that white background. And if it doesn't, report it, I think is what I was trying to get at. Just to circle back to our icon cards, our background color. So this is where you're actually choosing the color. This is the same palette as we've been seeing all over, from where we kind of chose our background color for our section. It is the exact same. I'm going to choose, let's do ice. Let's do ice. So and let's go ahead and choose our border. So we can choose border size here, rounded border options, and then shadow options. So a little bit more limited with icon cards. That's just because it is kind of like a big block link. You'll see in just a second. But you can also do some manual restyling here. So you can add backgrounds behind the icon card. So you can kind of triple layer color as well. But this will impact text. This will kind of sit as like a layer of color beneath your section and your actual icon card. So fun stuff. And please excuse me if I'm saying card instead of block. I'm also kind of coming around to this too. So let's just go ahead and add our block. And so now we have our nice blue little icon, and it's not clickable in the editing screen, but once we hit save and take a look, we can go ahead and click on it. And so you may also notice that when I'm hovering over these blocks, this little directional tool pops up. This means that I can shift where these all go, right? So I can move these around to my heart's content without having to create a brand new row or deleting the content and then remaking the content. This is a big gripe with rows and cards. So it's kind of nice about layouts is that you can move things all around, even section them in within the same column. So you don't even necessarily have to have multiple sections to have multiple rows. You can kind of just create one section and then move as though you can have unlimited rows, which is really fun. All right, just to circle back, we're going to add block, go back to our content blocks. And let's just go ahead and look at our views reference block so that we can add our articles in our event or our calendar. So we can say, this is our recent activity. Our views field, this is where you actually determine what it's going to be referencing, right? So when I'm clicking this value, there's articles and events. So for our article, we're going to choose recent articles. You could do article chain, but recent articles will kind of have the ongoing feed. And then under display, you're going to choose which one. So if you kind of remember where I was speaking about, this is just a label to kind of differentiate these so that you can have unique feeds. This is where you're actually saying, I want this feed or I want this feed. So if I remember right, I selected press release. This will show me everything that is an article that has been assigned that press release title. Background color, same thing. So I won't beat a dead horse here, but you can add a background color, a border, a rounded border, shadows, all of that fun stuff. But now I can hit save, add my block, and now I have my feed. So people could click that view all button and see all your press releases, but it'll keep it nice and succinct as well. And let's go ahead and add this one more block, content block. We'll go with views reference again. And then title, we can say this is our upcoming events. Perfect. Views field. So with your calendar, there's a couple of legacy items, but I would say that when you are actually placing a calendar in your site, you're going to choose mini calendar block month or week. Main difference between these two is that this will show you a month's worth of events. This one will show you a week's worth of events. I prefer the month's worth because I feel like that's going to give people the most amount of information. Kind of takes up the same amount of space anyways. Just makes sense to me. But to each their own. And then for display, we only have one option, which is block. This is actually placing the calendar block into the site. Same deal, you can add colors, borders, rounded borders, and shadows to this. I'm going to go ahead and add this block. And now, oh, looks a little funky on my display, but it should not look like this for you. Let's see if I move it to its own little space. See if I add a section. Down here. Awesome. Okay. Stretch is a little nicer here, so definitely noting that. But keep in mind that this is going to want to stretch for a whole week's worth. So maybe it was a bad idea on my part to go ahead and cram it into a part that has 4 individual sections. But this is what that view kind of looks like. So it's not a traditional grid calendar. It's going to look closer to a list, but that is done for easier keyboard use for accessibility and all that fun stuff. So this is what that calendar view will look like. You can see I've created lots of different test events and meetings. So this is going to show pretty much everything, right? So it's the whole calendar, even if you've created just one event. If there is an event that is still happening, it's going to show it in here. Okay, and so we actually have plenty of time. So let's go ahead and just go ahead and fill this with something else. This is our simple maps card. So if you remember, we can embed maps using this. So for my title, I could say, this is our office. You can add body text as well. Come and visit us. Perfect. Then address, I'm going to keep picking on our old office building. Denver, Colorado. Same deal with these guys, just extra styling. Let's go ahead and add that block. And now we have our interactive map. So if we kind of want to see what this looks like once we hit save, we can go ahead and save our layout. It's going to show us that public view. And there's that pink background I was kind of talking about when these things are kind of unpublished. And here's those events. They look much nicer when they're published. So they won't be as like kind of weird looking as they were in the back end. When it's published, this list will fit into this space. Just for some reason, it's a little awkward there. But this is that listicle I was kind of talking about, where instead of a traditional grid, it's going to be a list of items. Here's our interactive map. Our icon card, if we click on this, it'll take us to our home page, which I want it to, and all of that fun stuff. So if we want to go back in here and edit our layout again, we can click on this layout option. And so I can even add new sections under here and say, in between this row and this row, I would like 2 columns. I would like them to be even. Perfect. And maybe I can drag my events to up here. See, that fits so much nicer. Or I can even say, actually, I would like to trade places. So there we go. Once you hit publish and then edit again, it kind of sits a little bit better. And then we can move our map maybe down here instead. So this kind of resolves some of that heartache about not being able to move content between the rows. So definitely take advantage of this. Get in here and test and tell us what you think. Let's go ahead and add a new block. And let's just make sure I'm covering everything. I don't have an embedded code, but this is just an empty text box. If you have an iframe or anything like that, it'll go in this body space right here. I don't have one handy. Our slider block, this is that carousel. So when you are selecting this, it's going to set you up with an image card. Remove that. Go ahead and confirm that removal and add a media card instead. So any instance in which it is saying upload an image card or the option to use the image card, that's legacy. We'll support it for sites that currently have it, but it's not receiving like fixes or anything like that. So if you do have image cards, I would go ahead and move them to media cards. That's our most up-to-date version. You can add links to it. You can add a caption, all of that fun stuff. And then every single instance or card that you're uploading here will be a slide on that carousel. Okay. And then media, what it says on the tin, that's just going to be cracking open that media library, adding media here. So if we wanted to toss cannoli in here, selecting cannoli, go ahead and insert. Perfect. Background color, all that fun stuff. Say this is cannoli. Perfect. We can add him. So now this reference card is here. Perfect. Okay, so I know I kind of threw a lot at y'all, a lot of new stuff. Any questions? I wanted to keep a lot of extra time for questions or requests or anything like that. You can either raise your hand or type in chat if you're not feeling very chatty today. Or give me a thumbs up if everything looks good and you were ready to get in there and try it and report back. Awesome. I got one thumbs up. Awesome. So, any questions at all about it? Okay. Well, just with the few extra minutes that we have, just so I can cover it, because I'm realizing I skipped over it, I just want to talk about editing the footer. Briefly touched on it earlier, but just so you're aware, if you want to edit your footer, you're going to click on this pencil icon and hit edit. And we can see here that it is an equal columns row. We can edit this row and kind of toss whatever card we want in here. So the equivalence to this within layouts is kind of like our sections, and then our cards are our blocks. It's not going to be as flexible as layouts, but it is going to have that kind of functionality. You can add a basic card or a map card, media card. Some people throw their logos in there. If you need examples of footers as well, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to send some sites that have done a great job with their footers. And just remember, when you are building your site, putting it together, if you do not already have an accessibility statement somewhere on your site, be sure to add one, and also be sure to include contact information so that your constituents can report back and say, hey, found an accessibility issue on this site. I kind of need this to be fixed. And if it's something that you can't fix that we need to address, then report it to us and then we will do that legwork. But just make sure that you do have an accessibility statement somewhere on your site. That is going to be pretty important to make sure that you are additionally compliant to these standards. I unfortunately I can't give advice on what your accessibility statement should say. I would confer with your own internal teams, but just make sure that you have it somewhere on your site. Okay. One more time. Any questions about layouts? Anything that I didn't show that you would like to see? We have a few extra minutes. Anything that you are missing from rows and cards that we can find an equivalency to? Anything at all? Okay, sounds good. This training was recorded, so it will be uploaded to YouTube. Should be by the end of today. Once this is done processing, I'm just going to go ahead and get it uploaded. It's going to be added to the CMS site. So that site, that page where you have your training link. So this is cms.colorado.gov. With the new layouts, we're getting back into the habit of posting these recordings. So they're just going to live right here in this previous training sessions. Right, and let me go ahead and post the link to this in the chat for you so that you have it. Yeah, so this is the time slot that we have. So Austin's question, you said that this was the basic training. Will there be additional trainings we can attend to bring questions once we play around with layouts? Absolutely. This is a standing training session. So this happens every single month, always on that second Wednesday. So the next one that is coming up is going to be the 15th of April. We will cover the same stuff, including layouts as well. So you have a wealth of time to try out layouts and then come back with questions. We also have the open forum. So this is going to be on the 25th of March. So it's going to be coming up 2 weeks from now. You can also try out layouts in this time and then go to the open forum and then ask about layouts. So this is where we're going to have our product manager, Duncan, who's actually on this call. So you can bring some more tailored, detailed questions about layouts, and we can get really into the nitty gritty versus these basic trainings that are kind of intended for new users, but we wanted to include new layout functionality in this specific training so that more people are aware of it. Yes, Duncan.
Yeah, and Austin, if you come to those the end of the month, we really try and open it up to any questions that we can
Mhm.
answer. We try and have more comprehensive kind of membership of our team there too. So one of our devs, if some of the questions are more technical, if some of you all have, a more technical IT background, sometimes one of our QA people too. And, I'll be there as well if you have big picture questions about schedules and stuff like that. So yeah, that's more for kind of like a free format. But we always have this one at the second week of each month on Wednesday, just like this month. And if you ever have any new team members, they haven't had any experience with Drupal or maybe web development at all, feel free to send them our way. It's going to be
Mhm.
pretty much the same format. So
Yep, the only thing new is that inclusion of layouts. So we're going to start training on layouts more than rows and cards because we want people to kind of move to this functionality. We will still sustain and support rows and cards, don't get me wrong, but we want more people to start looking at layouts as a solution. So definitely check it out. We want to hear what you have to say. We want to hear feedback because it's seen a lot of changes and improvements since when we
yeah.
first rolled it out. Additionally, I know that there's lots of people who did not attend today but may be interested in layouts. I'm going to upload this today and then feel free to keep an eye out on the page. Once you see it's up here, share it with other people so that they can view it. If they need a timestamp for when the layout starts, it's about halfway through. I believe it was almost 10:30 exactly.
Just a few points too for
Yeah.
everyone. We'll have any new functionality. We have some new functionality coming on the next release too. Will be, on the training site, within a good amount of time. We'll make sure it's up there.
Mhm.
So you can reference it too. And another thing too is, our long-term roadmap for layouts is for it not to be its own content type, but rather another way to build a landing page or basic page. So,
Mhm.
how you guys see that rows and cards tab on our landing and basic pages, you'll see a layouts tab on there eventually where you can choose either way to construct your page, depending on, how comfortable you are with either too. The reason we're focusing on layouts is that's just the way that Drupal core is leaning, right? So
Mhm.
we want to make sure that we cater to that. And one last thing too, and I'm sure Sunny mentioned this, but not everything, especially like funky little moving icons and stuff on layouts, might be deemed accessible, right?
Mhm.
But if you guys want to use those for business needs, that is fine as long as you provide reasonable accommodation to your constituents, and have especially that statement on your websites as well. So yeah.
Yep. And just to kind of touch on page functionality, we've added a lot of stuff that was not previously in layouts that is in landing and basic pages, which is adding it to the menu directly from here. So this kind of functions as a page where you can just link it to the menu. Redirects, aliases. So if you want to change what the pathway looks like, you can change that here. Revision logs. This was missing prior. So if you like to keep track on who did what and when, revision logs are now here, authoring information, all sorts of stuff. So we've also kind of merged these functionalities so that layouts is closer to pages than they were before.
Right. And I was in another meeting, guys. So, Leah, I saw your question earlier in the chat and I'm sure it was answered. But or kind of your statement, and I can guess the question around it. Like obviously you can add different colored borders and backgrounds to blocks and things like that too. When it comes to contrast, this is content, so that's up to you guys, right? And understanding those accessibility standards yourselves too, right? We don't, not that these are colors that we offer, but light
Hmm.
blue background with a hot pink, border is obviously not going to pass those minimum contrast standards for WCAG 2.1. So, just make sure you and your teams are approaching that with care.
Yeah, and my point with that really was just to make sure it's not just a matter of personal preference of like what you think looks good together, but
Oh, no.
going in and comparing the hex codes and making sure it does pass that
For sure.
2.1 level.
For sure. And thank you for providing that resource to everyone, Leah. I know there's a
Hmm.
few online, so.
Okay, awesome. Are there any more questions before we wrap up? I know we're a little bit over.
And I can stay on for 5:10 too if anyone has any questions, we can treat it like an open forum. Rest of my team's free to go, but